Welcome everyone. My name is Darshan Doshi. I'm the founding director for the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at Flame University. And as a part of various initiatives that we've got, today we have Connections. Connections is essentially an initiative where we invite people, experts, entrepreneurs, investors, such as Shashank, who've been there, done that, and continue to push the envelope, push the limits of what we can achieve. And so we bring such people from different facets of life, different domains, geographies, educators, entrepreneurs, investors, experts, right? Subject matter experts, and a lot. So today we have Shashank Deshpande. I've known Shashank for a few years now. He and I are part of the Thai Pune Charter membership, where we promote entrepreneurship across Pune. And Shashank's story is one of the best stories to come out of Pune. I continue to say, Pune has all plethora of entrepreneurs and experts who have gone and dominated in the world, not just locally, not just nationally, but globally. And so to give a quick introduction of Shashank was a co-founder of Claris Technologies, which started in 2008. So there's an interesting story of 2008 financial crisis, I'm sure, that could have affected. And then outside of that, so he drove that for a few years until it was acquired by Globant. They continue to be present heavily in the user-centered design and technology development services, primarily focused to product companies. So these are, I'm assuming, what you would call SaaS companies. Claris grew to over 350 technology and design experts working with leading companies in enterprise and consumer segments. He also founded Cupus Design in 1992, got acquired by Frontier Software, Veritas, in 1999. So we have a serial entrepreneur, and his latest gig, if I can call it gig, is he is the managing partner investor at Pentathlon Ventures, one of the few very active large fund, venture capital fund out of Pune. And what Pentathlon Ventures does is it invests in SaaS companies in its early stage and handholds them to guide them to grow. So basically build in India, but build for the world. That's the theme there. And I'll let him speak a little bit more about it. He's a regular speaker at various design usability conferences around the country and the world. He occasionally teaches at NID Ahmedabad. Hopefully we can get him to teach at Flame University soon. Yep. And also IIT Mumbai.
IDC.
And he's a charter member at Thai, which means he guides a lot of the upcoming entrepreneurs or professionals who want to be entrepreneurs and enter the world of, or the domain of, entrepreneurship or startups, right? So that's a quick introduction of Shashank. Shashank, apologize if I have missed out on anything, but please feel free to jump in. The way we are going to run this session, everyone, is Shashank has prepared some thoughts around what he wants to cover today, and I'll let him share the agenda for his talk. But there's going to be enough time to interact, and so we've left almost half an hour out of the 1 hour on one-on-one on some interaction. So if you have any questions, if there's anything while he's giving his talk, you'll find the Q&A button at the bottom. Just hit that. You can put in your questions. I'll pull them up. I have some questions of my own which I have prepared for Shashank, but those will be secondary. First will be your questions. We value your time spending a Saturday evening with us. And Shashank, thank you for joining us on a Saturday evening as well. So welcome again, and all over to you.
Thanks, Darshan, for such a wonderful and generous introduction. Everyone can hear me right? Well, right? And you can see the slides as well. So thanks. Thanks, Darshan, and thanks to Anju and Anju for hosting me and working with me to set this up. And thanks to all the participants who are kind of joining on a Saturday evening, which is not very common, but I guess these days, in the era where we are all living in, or at the times that we are living in, this is probably quite normal. Yeah, my talk is going to focus on how design and businesses can combine together to create effective or successful strategies. And that's what I'm going to focus on. The outline of the talk that I have is there are 4 things that I want to talk today. And they're sort of connected and they follow each other, but sometimes they could you could iterate between them as well. So first thing I'm going to speak about is why some businesses succeed, understanding them through the lens of desirability, feasibility, and viability. Then I'm going to kind of analyze how business and design can collaborate, especially in the discovery process of who the user is, what he does. The third thing I would like to talk about are customer journeys and understanding service relationships. So that's very critical and becoming very useful in almost every business that I've seen. And then I want to kind of leave some tips saying, okay, hey, how can you co-create to very participative workshops? So these are the 4 things that I want to cover. With that context, let me show you some products. I'm sure some of you have seen this product. Again, great technology. However, very, very poor design and very poor business model because it didn't succeed. The manufacturer of Google Glass had to quickly remove the product out of the market. And they've relaunched it as an enterprise edition, but yet to see some good traction. There's another example that I have, and most of us know this example. Again, I would say that it's great design. Of course, a lot of this will be debatable, but I would say that it's great design, but very poor technology because the car wasn't performant. And of course, it was very, very poor positioning in the market. In fact, they could have positioned this much better and gotten much better traction. Again, another example, but from a very different world that I want to show is, let's say if you look at this whole insurance, again, great business model, but I believe very, very poor technology and poor design. No matter how hard you try, there is very little innovation that has happened in this industry in the last few years. Very recently, they have kind of focused on maybe pay-per use or trying to get a wearable technology to manage health risk, etc. But it's sort of rare. So you have, you take any product or any business that you see, it has to have a combination of business, design, and technology. And we've seen some very good examples. Airbnb is a great example. Of course, all of us know Netflix, Amazon. These are the companies those are true innovators. And somehow they've gotten this magic right. They're able to get this balance of business, technology, and design in the right proportion at the right time. And that's what makes them very, very successful. And they do it time and again. So what is the recipe of doing this? So if you look at every business, they have to have these 3 things right. One is this whole aspect of desirability or design, feasibility or technology. I mean, every product that you can think of or every service that you can think of need to have some technology behind it. And then viability. It has to have a right business strategy. Now, most businesses know how to get this balance right, because anything that's in slightly more proportion is not going to be good for that business. So you have to have the combination right. What I mean by viability is, will the customers buy the solution? Will the sales and marketing understand if the solution will sell in the market? They should know who is the right customer, which right geographies they'll be able to sell. So all those questions are very important. And as students of management, student management entrepreneurship, I'm pretty sure that viability is one of the most important things that you study or that you kind of look at. The second thing is feasibility. Can we build a solution needed for can you build the whole technology that is needed for the solution? Product managers like yourself, as well as designers, need to work very closely with developers to look at, what is the solution that you need to build, and should have the right performance, should have the right security, should have the right response time. All those things are very critical when you're looking at the feasibility. And similarly, it's important to understand the desirability aspect or usability aspect. Can customers derive the right value out of it? Can managers collaborate with the designers to create a very, very custom-friendly solution? So this combination is what this triad is a very important piece. And whenever you get an opportunity, look at whether this triad is the right triad, because having any one of them in the higher proportion is not going to be beneficial for your business. Now, for purpose of today's talk, I want to focus on business and design, because those are the two things that I consider are the most critical. Assuming that the technology is fairly commoditized, it's I mean, by and large, you can get. I mean, if you look at any two companies, there'll be not much difference between the technology that they use, but the difference could be in the way the user experience is, or the way design is, or how they have thought of the business model. So let's focus on these two aspects, and then try and see how we can get a right or a truly innovative product out of it. However, getting business and design is a very, very challenging aspect, and let me explain you why that is. It's a challenging aspect because they come from two very different mindsets. One, it's almost like one comes from Mars and the other comes from Venus. One is where he's got a very analytical mindset, and the other is very, very creative mindset. One is very empathetic, other is very focused on growth. One is looking at, one is comfortable embracing ambiguity. The other needs very crystal clarity. One design mindsets are sort of a very continuously experimentative type, whereas business people want very goal-directed things. And designers kind of like to work with things. They like to kind of play things, do some experimentation, do make and do, whereas businesses want it very, very metrics driven or matrices driven. So one is sort of a very right brain thinking, and the other is very left brain thinking. Now, how can you get these two minds together? It's kind of very hard. There are many businesses who have tried to do this, but haven't been very, very successful. So one of the strategies, and as part of your education, is to understand, empathize, how to work with the right brain thinkers, how to kind of ensure that there is empathy, there's creativity, there is ambiguity, there is constant experimentation. Some of these things are going to be very critical in today's day and age to be very successful. One of the models that I have found it pretty successful, and I'm sure you have used this in past, is this whole business model canvas. Now, there are several parts. I don't need to go into the details of this, because all of you, I'm pretty sure that in your when you evaluate a company, or when you're looking at strategies, you look at the whole business model canvas. But there are some areas where I have highlighted, where designers and business people can come together to look at. Maybe it could be customer segments, it could be their customer relationships, it could be value propositions, it could be key activities. Those things are areas where both the left brain and the right brain can come together to innovate. Just to give an example, Netflix has identified close to about 2,000 plus customer cohorts, and they make recommendations for each of these archetypes. So when you and your friend will log into Netflix, I think the kind of recommendation that you will get and your friend will get will be very, very different, because you probably are part of different cohorts. So that's the kind of thinking that has gone into segmentation, and this segmentation worldwide is close to about 2,000 odd cohorts. The second example is of Airbnb. So you see, if you look at what Airbnb does, is that they know that one of their customer segments, which is one of the most popular customer segments, is that every guest is their host and every host is their guest. And they do some special services to make guests host as well as host the guests. Because if you want to go to a place, you'll also want to rent your place to others. And they use this very, very actively into all their business strategies. So understanding your customer segment is very, very critical. Understanding their relationships very important. What the value proposition that you bring to them is very important. And what are the key activities that each of these customer segments are going to do on your product is also very important. And these are the areas where I believe that you can collaborate with designers to get this equation or get this understanding right. Now, how do you do this? I mean, there are several ways to do this, but I think one of the most common things to do is to do what is popularly called as design thinking. And the most common or the most simplest process that you can think of is what is a double diamond process. The first part of this process is focused on understanding who the customer is and what are his or her met as well as unmet needs. So some of these are stated needs, some of these are sort of a little more unstated needs, but it's very important that you try and understand those needs through a very structured discovery process, and we'll see what that structured discovery process is. So it's all about studying the problem space, studying what and why, and more time you spend studying the problem space or the is going to be crucial, and less on the solution side, because how is very, very simple. So understanding what and why is going to be very critical. So this design process first part will allow you to kind of say, okay, hey, what is the need, what is the problem, and what am I going to do here, and why am I going to do here. Once I have a good understanding of that, then doing how is a very, very simple solution. If you look at many startups, and in fact, there's a very often quoted study which talk about 90% of products that are launched, they fail. And I believe they fail because they haven't spent enough time focusing on what the need is, what the user wants, how they're going to use the product, how they're going to complete the workflows or do whatever they need to do on the product. And I've seen this again in startups, and I'm pretty sure in your journey as an entrepreneur, you'll also see some of these things where you've not spent enough time understanding the needs, understanding who the customer is, what does he want, how does he want. So the first part of the design process is to understand that. So if you look at a little more details of that design process or design thinking process, there are these 4 parts. The first part is about discovery. How can you get some new insights? How can you get these insights need to be from the user world, from the markets. Once you have a good understanding of insights, and you can either do a study, observation, interview, and I'll briefly talk about this in my next part. Once you have some good insight, then it's all about definition. Saying, okay, hey, how do I strategize this? How do I prioritize this? Which is more important? Which is less important? Kind of create high-level goals, and then based on those goals, get into the very detailed design, and then develop the product. So it's a sort of a linear process, but it's also very iterative. You kind of discover something, you define it, you quickly create a prototype, and then either you build the whole thing, or maybe you can create some quick and dirty prototypes, go back to the users and do this again. So even if I'm showing this in linear fashion, it's a very, very iterative process that you can use to go as closer to the what your users or customers are looking at. So I want to, for this session, I want to focus on what it means to discover some insights. There are several ways to discover. I mean, essentially, you can use interviews, you can use focus groups, you can use observations. The most common way to do is to do what is called as one-on-one interviews. There are also many marketing as well as design teams use focus groups. But one of the techniques that I really like, and which I think is very, very powerful, is this aspect of observation. Organizations prosper when they're able to tap this whole aspect of user empathy. And if you look at some of the most successful companies, be it, I mean, some of the good names that come to me are Harley Davidson. Intuit is another big company that does this very, very well. Royal Enfield is also another company who understands user empathy. So they very, very consciously bring customers in the ecosystem and constantly learn about them. They constantly try and understand what their tribe wants to do, what their cult wants to do, what their specific behaviors are, what their specific needs are. When Mohammad Yunus, who started Grameen Bank, when he decided to start a bank, I mean, he quit World Bank and he came back and he started. He didn't really start a traditional bank. He said, okay, let me work with the underprivileged. He spent a lot of time just listening to them, just understanding what their problems are, what the challenges are, and then based on that, he came up with a very successful, and this is not a charitable organization. I mean, he built a good bank, which is very, very profitable. So it's not like asking them, say, okay, hey, what do you want? It is just understanding them, just empathizing with them, just looking at their problems. Many companies use this very successfully. The other company that I can recall is Intuit. Intuit, when they launched the product, it was the 47th player in the business accounting space. But in less than 10 years, they moved from 47 to the #1 player. And why they could do that is primarily because every person, right from the CEO to the last person in the organization, was supposed to go and meet and spend some time with their end users, just talking to them, just observing them, just looking at what they do on a day-to-day basis. These could be housewives, this could be small businesses, this could be chartered accountants, whatever their profession is, but just look at what they're trying to. And because of that, they become very, very successful. And there are many case studies that I keep talking. So this user empathy is very important, and it should not be just relegated to saying, okay, hey, my design department or my XYZ team or my innovation team is going to do this. Every person, right from top to bottom, has to do this and understand, empathize with user and his user problems. Another quick example that I want to give you is that, when we were working with, this is part of my global thing, when we were working with Disney, Disney came with the problem saying, okay, hey, they wanted to see how they can build some sort of a technology intervention to help people who are standing in long queues. Every weekend or every vacation period, there to be long queues, and saying, okay, hey, what can we do to improve this? So when we started talking to some of these users, I think there are two things that we realized. One was that they had no idea that how much time they have to wait. I mean, there was sort of just no wait for them to know whether this is going to take half an hour, this is going to take 45 minutes, this is going to take 1 hour. And the second thing that they were not aware that there could be some other rides. So there could be other rides where there is not so much of rush. And both these problems were very obvious to saying, okay, why can't we tell the end user, saying, okay, how long they have to wait? So what we came up with was a very simple band, where once you have the band, it will tell you. I mean, you have a simple app and a band, and it will tell you that, okay, hey, you have to, you can wait for about 30 minutes here, or maybe go and look at the other ride and then come back. So sort of just giving you a sense of where you are and helping them find some other ride which is less loaded or which is less busy, as well as telling them, okay, from this point onwards to the actual, this thing is going to take about maybe 20 minutes or 30 minutes. That was good enough. So some of the insights can come by just looking at the people, looking at what they do, how they do things. So that's one aspect of discovery. The other aspect is understanding service relationships. So if I show you a range of airlines and ask you, saying, okay, what airline would you choose? Okay. Now, based on your experience of during ticketing, maybe during boarding, maybe during in-flight, or maybe the food that you got and in that time frame, or maybe you had to cancel a ticket, or maybe you had to reroute somewhere in between. I think based on each one of you will say, okay, hey, I prefer this airline or that airline. Right? So it's not just one product or one touch point that matters. It is the sort of a range of experience that would matter. And based on how you got, whether it's been a good experience or not such a good experience, I think you'll determine saying, okay, hey, whether I'm happy with that airline or I'm not happy with that airline. So it's important to understand that every business, and now I mean, you can take banking, you can take e-commerce, you can take your just like a Uber ride or a Ola ride. You take any, or a hotel business, airline business. Every business is no longer a single touch point. It's a journey. It's got multiple touch points, and these multiple touch points could be a web application, it could be a mobile application, it could be a telephone call, it could be somewhere you have to go to an ATM, or in some cases maybe you have to go and visit an office. Each of these touch points, be it a physical touch point or a digital touch point, has I mean, there are aspects of how business and design can come together to make that experience as frictionless as possible. So this whole service thinking or service relationship is about end-to-end service experience across all channels, and trying to see how different touch points are and how we can make those as frictionless as possible. Let me very quickly show you. This is a little dense, but I hope you can all see this. So this is a customer journey map, or a different touch points for Emirates travel. So if you look at, there are these touch points that I mentioned, which are red circles. Let me see if I can annotate this for you. Can you see this?
Yes.
Yeah. So these are the touch points, and for each of those touch points, there are several things that maybe a flight attendant. So this is all across, whether you're either in the pre-flight, you are post-flight, you are in the transfer, or you're during the flight. So each of these have either a flight attendant talking to you, or maybe a booking, someone at the booking counter talking to you, or someone at the ticketing counter that is talking to you. So each of these, so there's a complete journey that has been mapped. Now, if you look at this journey in a little more, so these things remain. So if you look at this whole thing from awareness to consideration to acquisition to service to loyalty, I mean, this is typically what every business will go through. As you can see, each of these goes, and touch points also connects to the various departments that you have in your organization. If it's, for example, if it's awareness, it's about, maybe it's some sort of an app, and there's some blog content or some news. This will probably go into the marketing or design. If there is some onboarding, it will probably go to some customer success or maybe onboarding team. If it's about acquisition, if it's about payments, then it will go into technology or engineering. So each of the touch points that you have do have some very deep linkages with your internal processes or with your internal departments. Now, it's very important that as a business person, you say, okay, hey, if you have to improve a touch point, or if you want to improve a service service experience, then let's see how we can do a better job in the marketing team, or how can you do a better job in the engineering team, or how can you do a better job in the customer success team. So each of the teams, so it's no longer just design and just no longer an app or a web portal or a technology intervention. It is about linkages that go very, very deep in each of the departments, and making them better, making them much more simplified is going to be critical in the overall business. So if I have to look at, let's say, Uber, this is a kind of a journey about Uber. So everything that happens, there are linkages into the backstage, and also in the front stage. So these are the places where the business manager and designers can come together. And just to give an example, when Flipkart came up with cash on delivery, this was a sort of a true innovation that happened in collaboration with various stakeholders. It's not like the designers came up with the innovative idea or the business managers came with. It was a kind of collective innovation that happened when all the players that you see on the table said, okay, hey, maybe we can make this happen. Because the primary friction was that people are not very comfortable doing credit card transactions or online transactions. So they say, okay, hey, let's offer cash on delivery. And once they were gotten a little comfortable, then people moved on to making online transactions. But this whole service innovation of saying, okay, hey, cash on delivery, we can make it happen, was very critical, and that innovation kind of completely changed that industry. So what you've seen till now is that, okay, hey, if you can use design thinking to discover the right persona, to discover the right scenarios, and look at the customer's journeys, these essentially are the foundations of your success business. And then once you identify these core things, then you have to see, okay, hey, how can I have my service management and service design person working close to each other to create some very innovative touch points, like the cash on delivery, or maybe the improvement of payment experience, or improvement of some onboarding experience, or maybe how can I make my entire IVR journey for someone who's calling me much better. So look at each of those aspects and see, okay, hey, maybe as a business manager, how can I work with designers? How can I work with marketing people? How can I work with technologists? How can I work with this, and see what improvements are possible? But how do you make that possible? How do you make this possible? I mean, you cannot just get these people together, right? I mean, so one of the sessions that I have is what I typically call this as a co-creation or the participative workshops. I believe that design or business or marketing or customer success should not be very siloed functions. They're all working towards solving users' problem. Designers kind of tend to be a little more siloed, but it's your job to kind of bring them together, appreciate each other's viewpoints, and have them collaborate in a very creative process to generate ideas through dialogue and participation. So one such technique that we very commonly use is what is called as the stakeholder workshops. And who are the stakeholders? When all the things that I mentioned, it could be a salesperson, it could be a business person, it could be vendors, it could be your users, customers. I mean, you can bring in everyone into this sort of a interactive workshop and give them this challenge of saying, okay, hey, how can I make this touch point better? How can I reduce the friction in this in this touch point better? And everyone can rally, everyone can come together ideas, because it's not that there's only one person who's the brightest or who's the best. I think it's important that everyone comes together in a very brainstorming manner. The idea is to kind of build on each other ideas to kind of get everyone excited and say, okay, hey, what is the best way to solve that problem? And there are several ways to do this. Sometimes people use these post-it notes, and it's important that you have to make it very visual, you have to make it very experiential, you have to make it very it has to be very quick and dirty. It need not be very very finished. Many years back, we were working for a virtual bank, and this bank decided that, okay, we'll not bring in people who are from the traditional banking industry. They said that, okay, let's try and get people who are from consumer industry. So we got people who are running e-commerce. So people from Amazon came in. We got people from Disney who came in, and they brainstormed and saying, okay, hey, how the online bank could be different. So it's always, some of the world's most popular innovation and design companies don't rely on just one one skill set or one mindset, they try and get people from different mindsets. I mean, I know IDEO, which is one of the most popular design companies. They'll get doctors, they'll get psychologists, they'll get artists to brainstorm on a problem. And the ideas they can come may not be really important, but it's kind of helps them to build on top of that. There might be some crazy ideas, but it just sometimes helps you to build on top of that. So use this sort of visual whiteboarding, visual brainstorming. Sometimes we have also used, and this is something you should try it out in a in-person workshop, is where you get Legos to do very structured thinking. You could be explaining some idea, it could be explaining some concept, you could be explaining some solution. Use this Lego bricks to kind of come up with a 3D model of that. And we have used in past 3D bricks to kind of actually come up with a business model canvas. So this is actually a picture of a business model canvas. So someone's actually say, okay, I'll create a business model canvas of 3D bricks, and that has worked well. However, we also used in a virtual world, we also used tools like Miro or Mural, and they have been also very successful. We've kind of had very good success with some 4 or 5 people coming together using Miro or Mural boards to brainstorm and come up with some visual thinking. And they have a lot of tools that allow you to paint, draw, create some brainstorming there as well. So in conclusion, I would say that if you look at what we've seen is, if you want to look at this whole usability, feasibility, and viability model, build a business model canvas, because that will give you some sense of where you are, and use that to collaborate with designers. Use the whole design thinking to build personas, and typical either use a double diamond design process or any other design process that you're familiar with. Use that to create a service blueprint. So do customer journeys and customer maps, journey maps, to come up with some sort of a high-level service blueprint. Okay, hey, where does customer journey start? Where does it end? Which are the touch points? And then pick up each of these touch points and do a participatory workshop to say, okay, hey, maybe can I get everyone into a very collaborative environment to brainstorm on a problem and come up with a visual solution? Yeah. So those are sort of high-level things that I wanted to talk about. I would just want you to leave with one question. What is common in each of these companies? So if you look at these 6-7 companies that have about 8 companies, these companies were co-founded by a combination of business and design people. And they have been successful because they have aligned the business strategy to build very, very successful enterprises. And the question for you is that, okay, can you bring these two mindsets, which are the left brain versus right brain, together to kind of build successful enterprises? Because I believe that good design follows business. And you can do this through empathy, service relationships, and very, very participative cross-functional collaboration. So I want to kind of stop there and ask if there are any questions, if there are comments, if there are any observations.
There are a few questions which I can bring to you. First of all, thanks a lot. This was an awesome presentation, and to do justice to so many topics in just 30 minutes is tough. It's really tough. But I think bringing those examples drove the points home. So here's a question from Navneet Perry. Why is service designer role not very prevalent in the Indian service companies?
Yeah, so I think what typically is happening, so service design is very, very common in many European companies. I think these are on the forefront. And of course, there are also many US companies that follow. However, Indian companies, I think they're just sort of ramping up on the curve of getting just the product design right. I mean, if you look at, and I can just give an example of, let's say, Airtel, for example. I mean, their app is such. I mean, they could really do so much with their application, but they're just looking at saying, okay, how can I make this better for payments? Okay, but that's not looking at this whole end-to-end service experience. So I guess it's a matter of time. It's a journey. It's ramping up. There probably many of these companies are slowly trying to understand, or you can say moving from being a pure product company to being having a little more services kind of a mindset. So it's starting to happen, but it's in very early stages. Sorry, I would say that it's still in the infancy.
So, Mandar Mhatre, who's also, he heads Apex Capital in Pune. He was on my podcast at Dasar. And he said, when it comes to technology or innovation or new roles, typically, India is falling behind maybe 5 to 10 years, depending on what space or domain that is. So I guess that is kind of in line with what you're saying is it'll eventually come here because what we are trying to do is more the groundwork rather than the top end value added work that we're trying to do. So here's a question from Sundaram. First question was, could you share these slides? And second is, how do you decipher untold needs?
Yeah. So I'll share this slide with Anju, and Anju, you please feel free to kind of share it with the participants who want to. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, there's hardly any proprietary thing that I've used. Yeah. So to answer the question, saying, okay, how easy, how difficult it is to discover unmet needs. I think that's one of the biggest challenges that the industry faces today. And I would say that there is no simple solution to that. I mean, it's not like you. I mean, if you on one side of the extreme, you have someone like Steve Jobs who say, okay, users don't know what they need. Okay, to the other side where we come from school of thought that okay, there are always some unmet and unstated needs that users have. So, so my recommendation for anyone who is trying to say, okay, hey, how can you uncover, how can you look at unmet needs is to form some hypothesis based on some real observation. Do a quick and dirty prototype, take it back and try and see if that helps. And then maybe based on that, do another iteration or the third iteration. So this whole MVPs were designed or MVPs were thought because it is sort of very hard to uncover what users really want or what users really look at. I mean, there's no way that let's say something like cash on delivery or something like let's say try before buy. I mean, like right now, companies will send apparels to you and then they'll. So all those things that it wasn't possible unless they kind of tried it out in some smaller ways, piloted it in few places, saw some response, improvised on top of that, and then got it scale. So experimentation is the only option here. I don't see any easy way to do this. I mean, you would be lucky if you can get a very rockstar designer or a super designer like what Steve Jobs was, who intuitively understood what users need, and he kind of came up with a product that appealed to everyone. But it's kind of very rare to get that kind of observation. And it's also a little bit of art and science to get this right. How do you observe it? Whom do you observe it? So there needs to be some thoughtful study or thoughtful work that has to go behind that. But yeah, I mean, experimentation.
Just a follow-on question on this, Shashank. Because I teach, or I've been teaching Lean Startup for about 6-7 years now, right? And in Lean Startup, it's the whole MVP approach, right? Put it out there, because what people talk and say versus what they do are two completely different things, especially when it comes to purchase or money, right? Or even using, for that matter, usage. So a follow-on question is, a lot of the education, management education has focused around do market research, or market research ke niche sab kuch dal dete. right? And so what people are saying is, oh, I've surveyed 100 people, right? But then everyone wants to be supportive. Everyone wants to not have awkward conversations, right? So a follow-on question is, at what point do you create hypothesis? And because you also said, really just empathize, spend time with the problem, right? With the people who are facing the problem, right? Versus creating a quick MVP and rolling it out. So maybe some thoughts on that.
Yeah. So I believe that there is no substitute for actually spending a lot of time actually doing research. Really, like for example, when today someone will come and say, okay, hey, you are building a product where we are offering some small package of insurance to let's say corporates, for example. I mean, someone will come up with a business idea like this, right? So, okay, we are offering some small packet or sachet insurance product to some startups and for something. But I think the typical question is saying, okay, hey, who is the cohort? What are these small corporates? Are these mid-sized corporates? Are these large-sized corporates? Are these are these young audience? They're old. So I think many of these questions, many of these, we have seen that founders, startups, managers don't spend enough time studying that thing. Now I could be making like a very broad statement here, but I mean, especially in startups and new age entrepreneurs that I've seen, they're mostly trying to copy or ape a business model that someone else has tried out and say, okay, hey, I can also do this and be successful at it. That can take you only. I mean, it has a limited value. I think it will not take you too far, in my opinion. But yeah, there's no substitute to spending a good amount of time really doing MVPs, doing some lean work here. Just talking to once you take something to the users, I think there is a phenomenal amount of feedback and comments that you'll get, which is truly unbelievable. I mean, I cannot discount how valuable that activity is.
Awesome. So here's a question from Jihan. We are a social venture in the road safety space. For us, the biggest challenge is how to design for an audience that doesn't see value in the cause, that is their own safety. I'm assuming he's talking about the Indian roads and Indian people operating on Indian roads. Sorry, I'm laughing because you would assume a person puts value on his or her own life, but then you see motorcycles or people driving the way they do drive, and then you kind of wonder where's the safety. So any thoughts, any guidelines, or any points, tips, resources for Jihan?
Yeah, I mean, I think somewhere where I mean, if you don't care about safety, or it's hard to. But I mean, I think the only way to do this is to sort of either ensure through some sort of a regulation, government regulation, which again, I'm pretty sure it's not working, or working through insurance. I mean, if you're a more risky driver, then you have to have some penalty on that. I mean, I think why it works elsewhere in other countries, and I think it's just the it's, if you're a risky driver, you have to pay higher insurance. I mean, that's the only way to drive it. But yeah, I mean, if you don't care about your life, why would you even care about higher insurance premium? But the way to do this is through some sort of a regulation. But it's an interesting problem, or interesting thought of how can you get someone who doesn't even care. I don't know if there's any easy solution or any easy way to do this.
Yeah. Sounds good. Sure. Here's a question from Vikas Agarwal. I think this will be maybe the last question that we'll take. How do you handle extraordinary expectations of end users? Where do you stop in the ocean of never-ending, solutions?
Yeah. So I'll always say that you don't have to talk to one user or you have to talk to 5 users. I think you have to have a sort of a range. Typically, if you talk to about 10, 12 users and you see a very similar expectation from each of them, then I think you have to understand that maybe that's the baseline expectation. But if someone may have a very, very high expectation about saying, okay, I want these 20 features, and someone will say, okay, hey, these 2 features are the minimum. So you have to balance it out. You have to see, okay, how best you can provide a baseline so that it's like when you're designing a furniture, you can design for someone who is 6 feet tall or someone who is 4.5 feet tall. But ultimately, what works and what is optimum is to design it for maybe a 75th percentile or 80th percentile person. That's how typically you do things. So you look at if you can get a baseline, talking to some 12, 15, 20, whatever number of users you believe you can talk. And generally 10 to 12 users will give you a good sense of whether there is there's a common baseline or not.
Perfect. Okay, maybe one more. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
One more question.
Yeah, please.
So here's another one from Navneet Perry. He says he's read an article which said UX design is not a role, but rather a process. So
That's
maybe
correct.
some thoughts around user UX design.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, design thinking is a process, right? I mean, I also talked about that process of discover, define, design, and develop. So it's a process, and in each of those, there are different roles that you'll need. So it's definitely not a. I mean, I would say that's more of a practice where you can help any problem with the process and artifacts that you bring in. And there are some people who are good in discovery. There are some people who are very good in definition, especially strategizing and prioritization. There are some people who are very good in the actual design, where they can create all these wireframes, mock-ups, etc. And then there are some people who can create what is required by developers to develop the product. So there are multiple roles that come in here. So it's not just one single role or not one single individual who do all that. I mean, in some cases, or many odd cases, a person will do everything. I mean, he'll do right from discovery to design to detailed design to actually helping engineers develop it. But more often than not, these are multiple roles, and you're absolutely right. It's a process. It's not just one single role. It's and applying that process in a very repeated, consistent manner is what will give you a better outcome on various, and it could be a product innovation that you're looking at or a service innovation that you're looking at.
Brilliant. So this has been an awesome session. Thank you, Shashank, for joining us on a Saturday evening. Thank you all for joining us. I hope you found value in this. We've opened up. Sorry, go ahead, Shashank. You had something.
No, I was saying that I'll send my slides, and it has my email address and my.
Perfect.
So if someone wants to write to me and wants to have some conversation, happy to do that, Darshan. Yeah.
Thank you, Shashank. So next week, not next week actually, a couple of weeks down the line, on November 13th, we have a follow-on session which is Unbundling Creative Potential. And this is by Professor Ramnath Narayan Swamy. He's a distinguished professor of social sciences at Flame University. Comes with a lot of international, national experience in this domain. So make sure those who are here, you can register for it and take the benefit of his expertise and experience as well. I hope you found a lot of value in this session. Thanks a lot for joining in on a Saturday evening. We will continue to organize such sessions. And Shashank, thanks a lot for taking time, and your guidance. I know there's a lot of work going on, a lot of activity going on, and then Diwali is coming through. And then people want to watch cricket matches as well. So rightly so. So thanks a lot for tuning in, and we will see you soon again. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks. Bye. Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Take
Bye.
care.